Good evening. Welcome to the February 17th meeting of the Select Board in Auburn. This open meeting of the Town of Auburn Select Board is being conducted both in person and remotely, consistent with Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, which suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed to participate remotely as long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. For the public to join the meeting remotely by telephone, dial 1-408-650-3123 and use access code 983-263-437. Or the public can join via computer at meet.goto.com/Auburn Select Board Room. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. Please note that this meeting is being recorded by Auburn Cable Television. Is anyone else recording tonight's meeting? All right, so first we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand if you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so let's see. Do we have any public comments? No, okay. We don't have community organizations or presentations or public hearings, nor do we have departmental items or communication. So, Select Board general items, we're going to discuss and review a land disturbance warrant article with possible board vote to place it on the 2026 annual town meeting warrant. Will you tell us a little about that, Ms. Vecchio?
Yes. Probably a few meetings ago, the board had asked me to send the land disturbance warrant article to town council and to get the proper verbiage so that it could be placed on the annual town meeting warrant. So this is the item coming back to the board for consideration and discussion for any amendments or changes or a possible vote to actually put it on the warrant article.
Okay. All right, so I'll read this, and this is to see if town meeting will vote to amend Chapter 14, Section 14.03 of the general bylaws by inserting two new sections, 14.031B and 14.031C, as presented below in bold and red. So B is, if applicable, no person shall act upon, I beg your pardon. If applicable, no person shall act upon, or, we erased that, didn't we? Yeah. So no person may apply for a land disturbance permit until first receiving a building permit from the town. And C, if applicable, the building permit fee shall be tripled if any land disturbance activities are performed prior to the issuance of a building permit. All right, conversation, questions?
I think I've made it stated a couple times. So again, when they're going for a building permit, they might not know when they need to do land disturbance. I think the intention is to stop clear cutting, and I'm okay with that aspect, but I'm nervous of the unintended consequences of people not being able to move forward until they have, and sometimes a lot of this goes hand in hand, but I don't have a optimal solution, and I'm not going to stand in the way of this going.
Great, thank you. Dan, do you have anything?
Nope.
Okay, Todd?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank staff for putting this together. I know I had floated the original idea, and the board had voted to bring it to staff to get the correct wording. And as Mr. Chambers said, the goal of this was, when I was on the planning board, even before I was on this board, we would see plots of land be purchased by developers and then clear cut with the thought that they were going to be going through the regulatory process, getting their planning board approval, site plan, and then constructing. And what we've seen is time and time again in our residential neighborhoods and even on our main corridors, the developers, for whatever reason, at some point during that process, they get the land disturbance permit from DPW, they clear cut the land, and then either they don't finish the planning board approval, or they get the site plan and then never construct. So what we're left with is sometime going back 10 years, 5 years, 7 years, even further than that. If you go to Google Street View, you can see that we've had clear cutting on a number of parcels that are now sitting there. And there are environmental issues where, the native plants, the native plantings have been wiped away. It's now full of Japanese knotweed. In some cases, the developers have turned it into a waste transfer station without proper permitting. So there's, and time and time again, our neighbors and our residents are left with eyesores that they're looking at, and it's all throughout the town. It's not centered in one area. So thank you for staff for putting this together. I know a number of residents have contacted me over the years wanting something like this, so I'm happy that it's going to go forward.
Okay. Any other questions? Do I hear a motion?
Let me read the agenda here. I make a motion to place a land disturbance warrant article on the 2026 annual town meeting warrant.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so now we're going to head to the budget. Fiscal 27 budget discussion and review.
Thank you. Good evening. This is my very first budget in front of the Board of Selectmen, and I have to say it was a fun process. It was probably different from some of the documents you've seen in the past, which were a direct result from what you've requested and what our Finance Committee has requested. Just to, not that I'm messing this up already, just to talk a little bit about our process. In the past, our department heads would submit a budget to the town manager. The town manager would meet with them, and they would sort of formulate the budget based on their mutual agreement or what the town manager said. And what this board has asked me to do, and what Finance Committee has asked me to do, is actually bring forward the departmental recommendations. And the departmental recommendations are much different than what I am recommending. And that does not mean that I don't agree with the recommendations, because in fact I do agree. I don't have any disagreements with the department heads. They know what's in the best interest of their departments. I just know what I can fund and what I cannot fund. So as we go through this, I want you to keep that in mind, because my recommendations are much lower, and that is because of our funding sources and what we have for funding, not for what the recommendations were. So your priorities were to try to keep the increase in tax levy below the 2.5%, which is the proposition 2.5, to use free cash for capital versus tax levy to decrease the amount of tax levy needed, to prioritize DPW and Auburn Public Schools, and to provide additional detail from each department to include discretionary and non-discretionary spending, and also to provide actual department requests versus matching the department with town manager recommendations. You also see in your package this year is, in a lot of cases, you'll see a breakdown of what the department is requesting, what the difference is between last year and this year, and what the recommendation is and why. And if there's an increase in their budget, why. If there's a decrease, which I don't think there are in many, why as well, so that you have an understanding. The town manager budget recommendation for fiscal year 27 is $86,074,012. The departmental budget requests that I received were $88 million, which is $2 million less than what I'm asking for to be funded. The budget recommendation raises taxes by 2.13%, which is $217,000 short of the 2.5 under Proposition 2.5. The excess levy under this budget scenario is approximately $9.47 million. The budget recommendation considers the following challenges, and most of you know some of these challenges, but we have an increase of $1.274 million in health insurance costs. That is the highest cost I have ever seen in my career. I spoke to our consultant this week, and one of our providers is trying to get a 42% increase for health insurance. This is going to be a challenge for us moving forward. We are going out to bid to either get different providers or work within our current health plans to modify any type of plan design that we can to try to keep these costs down. That is a huge issue for us now, and going forward, I don't see it going to be resolved anytime soon. We have a $300,000 increase in Worcester County retirement as well. We have a $300,000 increase in the Bay Path assessment. So these are expenses that we don't have an option but to pay. Solid waste contract expires 6/30/26, so that's also an unknown. The departmental budget requests that are left unfunded were 4 patrol officers that were requested by my police chief. He did so with doing all the research necessary to propose a police department that continues to be safe, keep our neighbors, our residents safe and secure, to address all the investigations that need to happen, and because the department is extremely busy, as you know. It doesn't fund 2 DPW labor positions, despite the fact that the board wanted me to make it a priority. I was not able to do that for 2 positions. $300,000 for supervisors on all shifts at the fire department, I wasn't able to fund. An assistant director for DDIS, which is much needed as well, I wasn't able to fund, and I had to cut the Auburn Public Schools $100,000. The budget does fund the following: all the collective bargaining agreements for all of our unions, both school and town. A 2% COLA for all non-represented employees. The increase of health insurance costs of 1.2, I am able to fund through this budget. The increase in retirement costs of $300,000. So as you can see, the challenges that we initially had, I have been able to resolve, but it's at a cost. It's a cost of what I'm not able to fund. We anticipated a solid waste increase of 6%. I hope that's enough, but we do have the reserve account if it is not enough. The proper funding of fleet maintenance supplies. If you've watched a finance committee meeting from January to July of every year, you'll see transfers in the finance committee for fleet maintenance, supplies, and service. Every year it's underfunded. This year it is properly funded. I'm hoping we don't have to go back. I did fund 2 part-time interns for the Department of Public Works. They were low budget items, but they will be able to help that department. And I also was able to provide an OpenGov module for DPW, and what that does is it ensures the communication between DPW and Town Hall, assessing, clerk's office, DDIS. That was a priority for me and a priority for the department. So if a land disturbance permit is issued, it's actually all through the same system. So there's no way DDIS is not going to know what DPW is doing. So that was a priority as well. So that is my presentation. I'm going to introduce Karen. I don't have to introduce her because you know her. She's going to do her presentation. I don't know where it is, though. This was mine. Thank you. Could you
This is this one.
Yeah.
And now
So
I use
5
hit space bar or go forward.
Okay, what is up there right now?
Good evening. So I'm going to present part 2 of the presentation that has more of the numbers and the details of the budget. So the first slide is a summary of the budget that's being presented to you this evening, and we're going to go into a little bit more detail about some of the areas. So the appropriations that are being proposed are $90.7 million, which is going to be funded with local receipts of 13.6, cherry sheet receipts 18.891, a tax levy of 51.7 million, debt exclusion 1.4 million, and available funds of just over 5 million, for total revenue sources of $90 million, and we are presenting a balanced budget. As the town manager had mentioned, there will be an excess levy capacity of 9.477 million, and we're utilizing 2.13% of the 2.5% of the Prop 2.5. Revenues versus expenses. We have in our revenues local receipts. Now we're going to see more of a detail of those, but most of them were level funded to be conservative, but I'll go through a few of the categories on that in a minute. The cherry sheet receipts, we are using the governor's version at this time, which did go up 266,000, very minimal. Tax levy, as I mentioned, 51.7 million. The debt exclusions, available funds, we're going to go through those, increased almost $2 million for the total revenue of 90.7 and total appropriations of the same dollar amount. So on the tax levy, a little bit of the calculation. We start out at the tax levy base of just over $59 million. The 2.5% increase is 1.475 million. And we're adding new growth to be very consistent and conservative with the prior years at 700,000, which would come up to a levy limit of 61.2 million. But we are projecting a levy of 51.7 million. And the 51 million out of the 61 would be 84.62%. Well, this is the detail of the local receipts that we're projecting for FY27. Most of the categories are level funded. You'll see a few changes in the enterprise funds, which are listed in here, with their budgeted amounts for fiscal 27 and their estimated indirect cost offsets for fiscal 27. The other category that we did adjust was the investment income, because we do not see that coming in as favorably as it was in the last couple of years. So we did include a reduction from 800 to 600,000 in this budget for total local receipts of 13.6 million. The available funds, you're going to see some changes in this category. And we're going to talk about the CIP, but when you see that we're using 1.7 million in free cash, that is to fund CIP in lieu of using the tax levy for fiscal year 27. Most of the other categories are generally level funded. In ambulance, we have some CIP plus some items that are covering the operational budget. And let's see. Just looking down to see if there's any other. But those are the two significant, or a couple of the significant changes in the other available funds. And the other item that's listed here is the cherry sheet, and again, we're using the governor's numbers on that. Okay, the next slide is showing the budget summary by department, comparing it to prior years, for a total of what the town manager is recommending of the 86.074 million. Some additional items that need to be budgeted as well. For the abatements, we're going back to a more consistent amount of 400,000 for the overlay. We're using the cherry sheet charges from the governor's and the offsets from the governor's budget version. And the items that are listed underneath here are the amounts that are in our CIP budget that are offset by the revenues that we saw earlier, coming up to 90.5 million. Now, I've put a couple of the warrant articles in here. The Medicaid for the school, because that's offset by general fund receipts. The foster care transportation, the same thing, that's offset by general fund receipts. And there's $25,000 in here, which is a warrant article for the assessors for training, support, and reval services of $25,000. And that brings us to $90.7 million. This is just a snip of the CIP budget for fiscal year '27. Like I said, it looks a little bit different than it has in the past. You'll see that the total is $4,848,000, and we have $1.7 million that's being funded by free cash. The sewer capital is being funded by the sewer retained earnings. The golf course capital is being funded by the golf course retained earnings. There is our funds being requested for an ambulance in here, which is being offset by ambulance funds. We have $50,000, which is an annual amount that is used from our CIP trust fund. $200,000 from the stabilization fund, which is consistent with what was funded from last year. $80,000 from perpetual care, which is funding the cemetery capital. And the amount that we're projecting to be funded through bond proceeds, $1,890,071, which is the total of the CIP, $4.8 million. So just as a quick summary, we have $90.7 million for our revenues and expenses. We do have a balanced budget, and we're utilizing 2.13 of Prop 2.5, and that dollar amount, as the town manager had mentioned in her presentation, was $217,273. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question, actually, to start. We're using $1.7 million in free cash. Is that consistent with the fiscal policies that we have?
That is actually in excess of our fiscal
By
policies,
what amount?
by close to that amount. Because I think there was maybe a couple $100,000 that wasn't allocated through the annual town meeting. So this is over and above what our current policy is.
Okay, yep.
If I may, through the chair, as the board had recommended, we have met with Department of Revenue and DLR to do an audit of our financial management policies. And one of the things they talked to us about is something that's very near and dear to the board's heart, and that is our free cash numbers and our stabilization. They agreed that our free cash projection of what we should have is probably on the low side, but what we have is really high, so that it should be falling in the middle. We do not have their recommendations yet for policy changes, but this, knowing we're using this knowing that they want us to spend this down. And it was a recommendation of the board as well, and we're still going to be in excess, just to let you know. Until we find out exactly what they're recommending for a policy, I don't know how much, but I will bring it to the board as soon as I find out. But they did say that our policy is probably a little low on what it says, and we have too much free cash.
Okay.
So it'll definitely be something I bring back to the board.
All right, thank you. So just to for our viewers at home, we have, our fiscal policy right now is too conservative, and it tells us to spend a smaller amount than we probably should be spending. So this is an adjustment. All right, thank you very much. All right, anyone else have a question?
Yeah, I just have a couple questions before we get into the department level. First, for our CFO treasurer, can I just ask, on page 5, under available funds, perpetual care, we're increasing $80,000 from $25,000 last year to $105,000 this year. What is the perpetual care available fund?
The perpetual care is actually a trust fund where the monies go into when we receive them for the care of the graves and, you know, in the cemetery.
Thank you. Couple questions based off of the town manager's presentation. With respect to the health insurance and that drastic increase, have we looked at doing what some other municipalities have done, which is joining the state GIC plan to see if there's any cost savings under the sort of the bulk buying mentality?
Through the chair, it's a very good question, and I watched the GIC Weekly, and last week, they pushed off the conversation about GLP-1s, which is one of our, not only us, but most municipalities' largest pharmaceutical expense, and they pushed that off for another month. They know that municipalities watch what they do. It is something that I will definitely continue to watch. We are self-funded, so we actually pay for our own claims. And as long as our administration costs stay low, it might not be necessary to move to the GIC, but it should also always be considered and an option. And not only GIC, but there's also a fully funded program through Maya that's pretty well established. I think it's important to keep our eye on all of those moving parts, because this is not going to go away. And I applaud previous administration's financial policies to have the amount that we have in our healthcare trust to be able to basically in this budget partially fund our deficit, because we're doing 2 premium holidays or 2 cycles for the school department, 4 for the town, that actually helps offset the increase in our health insurance costs. And the reason we'd have to do it that way is because if we just did our deficit, it doesn't benefit the employee at all, and the health trust is made up of town and employee funds. So in order to give back, you have to give back to both the employee and the town.
Thank you. You had mentioned the solid waste contract being expired at the end of June. Have we started that negotiation? Normally those start about a year out, and do we know if that 6% is anywhere in line with where they're looking for?
Yes, we have started discussions with them. Actually, it was started quite a while ago. We have a lot of conversations, so yes, and we're hoping the 6% is in the right area. And if it's not, we do have some reserve funds set aside that I put intentionally for that issue and a couple other issues that are still unknowns at this time that I don't want to be caught later not able to pay.
And the last question I have, based on the presentations, is in terms of the new growth projection, have we been hitting that in recent years, or have we been overestimating how much our new growth would be, or underestimating?
Actually, last year is a year that we did not hit the goal. So that's why we wanted to be reasonable but conservative with what we're projecting for the new growth. And I checked with the assessor to make sure he was comfortable with the 700,000.
Okay, so that's a conservative figure based off of the fact that we didn't hit it last year.
Correct.
Thank you.
Not hitting it last year, is that because some things that were supposed to be online didn't get online, or our estimation was off?
Through the chair, it was in anticipation of Eastland Partners coming on. The time frame didn't actually work out to what was anticipated, and it wasn't done necessarily by myself or the chief financial officer. So outside that, we're not really sure. All other prior years, we were able to meet what we had projected. That was the first year, so.
Do we anticipate Eastland Partners fulfilling that this year? I know there's other projects in flight that I would expect in springtime we'll see a boom, but.
Eastland Partners has come through for the fiscal year that we're in.
All right, so we're going to go through the list that's in our agenda. The first thing we're going to look at is the CIP. Does anyone have questions on the CIP? Oh, so we should, okay, this is CIP just for the departments that are here, okay? I do have a question about police vehicles and the lease purchase.
Madam Chair, can we take these as we take the actual departments? I think it would be more
You want to do it that way?
efficient. Well, I just think it's more efficient rather than taking it, it's all part of the budget, their
All right.
budget. So if
I would-
you don't mind.
I would prefer the other way, but that's fine. You're just going to make me flip
Let's
and
just
take-
have him, make him come up once, all right? So we're going to stay there. All right, so next we're looking at the moderator. Any questions on the moderator budget? And how about the select board budget?
How often do the dues, the membership dues increase?
Through the chair, they typically increase annually, but it depends on the due. Some dues are based on the salary of the town manager, and some are just set across the board. So it could increase every year.
Next, we'll look at the town manager's office.
I have some questions, Madam Chair, but if other members want to start, I'm
Yeah.
more than happy to defer to them.
Let me ask, what is the parking service for $400? I don't recall that one.
That is for any employees that have used their vehicle and pay for parking at any type of professional development or a meeting. We need to have funds set aside just in case someone needs that.
So just to reimburse employees if they've spent money in parking, if they go to a training or something,
That is correct.
okay? Anyone else have questions?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I do. So we're carrying the assistant town manager part-time through next fiscal year. I had thought once we brought on a permanent assistant town manager, that expense would be going away. Do we anticipate that being here for the entire fiscal year, or is that going to be going away at some point?
That's a great question. Through the chair, I do anticipate that position, the funded amount of $31,000 to be a part-time assistant town manager for the full year of fiscal year '27. I feel at that point, we'll be in a position to go back down to one assistant town manager. As you know, our assistant town manager that we hired back in September is currently the acting planner and the acting land use coordinator, and the economic development director. So at this point, it is necessary to keep both of them on. They do different things, and at this point, the assistant town manager that was hired in September is honestly not able to do many assistant town manager duties right now.
So we anticipate that he will not be able to be onboarded to fulfill the assistant town manager until June 2027.
No, I wouldn't say that. I anticipate throughout this year that we will continue to bring him into meetings and get him more and more involved. We are hoping to hire the new people, the planner, the land use coordinator. The planner definitely sooner rather than later, land use maybe a little bit later. He is very intimately involved in all aspects of those divisions, and he needs to continue to be, as it's a priority of this board and a priority of myself. So in order to meet those needs and economic development needs, he is not able to spend the time on processes such as the budget process and things like that. But I do tie him into different meetings that he needs to assist with. So I do not anticipate that he won't do those duties. It'll just be limited.
Okay, thank you.
Questions?
So I heard that it's not fully needed, but you want to fund it for the full year? The assistant, the second assistant?
No, I'm sorry if I misspoke. It is needed. The second assistant is needed for the full year of 2027 at $30,000, which is probably 10 hours a week, 15 hours a week, but as you know, I can probably get like 20 or 25 hours a week out of him, depending on what's going on. He's a necessity, as my current assistant town manager is not able to do as many assistant town manager duties, if any at all, right now. Next year, I anticipate phasing him in more and more into that role, so that a year from now, we'll be having a different conversation.
Then the role of chief, is that being fulfilled 100% of the time? And Again, I don't know how that works on the hours and how they're dedicating time, but I feel like if he's needed in the role of chief, that's where he should be, and we only brought him on part-time to assist through transition, and 2-year transition seems excessive, but.
Understood. And through the chair, because I hired for someone with the expertise in planning and economic development in an area that needed specific attention, and the loss of positions that I didn't anticipate, it is taking longer to transition, absolutely. I think it is important to ensure that our table of organization is strong and our structure is strong, and that if I'm not here or if one of my assistants is out at a development site, that there's someone else that is able to answer the call in an emergency and to ensure that we meet the expectations of the resident and this Board of Selectmen. It is important to note that the part-time assistant town manager does a lot of his duties at night. For us, I get 1 million emails every night, the next morning when I come into work. So he works a lot, he likes to do that. I am grateful he likes to do that because it's to the benefit of myself and the town of Auburn. But yes, it was not expected to be this long.
I have a quick question. So should you backfill those 2 positions that the assistant town manager full-time is assisting with right now, do you anticipate that you would still continue to need the chief for that part-time role?
So there will be, through the chair, there will be a transition period for the planner and the land use coordinator, and there will still be intimate involvement of the assistant town manager, economic development director in those processes throughout this year. I don't believe we're going to be able to bring people on and have them move forward with our vision and what we want for customer service and what the residents have been asking for without that additional oversight. So that's why I'm saying probably about a year from now, we'll be having a different conversation, and hopefully we'll be completely staffed and we'll be making some of the changes that we've all been looking to make.
All right, thank you.
We just have a request. We have 2 assistant town managers, and obviously, something that, does get missed, and we're kind of covering it now, is most of our department heads do more than one job. So the fact that Mr. Delaquila is an assistant town manager part of his salary should be shown in your budget, because he's an assistant town manager. There shouldn't be 1, there should be 2. And then we can talk about the economic development and see what that's really costing us, as opposed to saying his salary's sitting there. And I know that's how it's kind of been done since Ed held the position, since the position was basically created. But I would like to see the budget reflect whatever percentage of his salary is expected to be in the assistant town manager, because the reality is he's still going to be the economic development director. That isn't going away. So I think we all need to understand as a town that we are asking and have consistently asked the assistant town manager to wear 2 hats. In Mr. Kazanovich's situation, he held 3 hats. He was the town accountant, he was the CFO, and he was the assistant. And that's a lot, that's a lot to carry. And we are a small town, we can't afford to hire everybody for every little thing. But on the other hand, we do have to reconcile that we are asking a lot. My only concern with the fire chief continuing is, I understand that he's ready and willing and able. I do worry about burnout for any department head who's putting in those kind of hours, and I know he's not the only department head that I'm aware of who's putting in a consistently heavy schedule. So I would just, as soon as we can, transition him to less of a burden. I would appreciate that, because, again, I know that he's very enthusiastic. He's a hard worker, but, again, this is a toll on him as a staff member that, I don't necessarily want to see continue for an extended period of time. But thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
I don't know if it's more of a question, but I mean, it sounds like there'll be transition, so if we funded it until December, I think that would be half of, instead of the whole fiscal year, that gives the transition period with a deadline rather than the whole fiscal year.
I mean, my concern with that is that we don't have a timeline on when the town planner's coming, when the land use coordinator position, which is becoming vacant, is coming, and when I forget exactly what we call the position, but Brooke's former position, the economic coordinator, are getting filled. And right now, I know that Mr. Delaquila is not only assistant town manager, but also covering all three. So he's wearing 4 hats. Kudos to you, you beat Ed. So unless we have a timeline on that, I just, my concern in raising it was to identify that it's there for the first time and to make sure that we all red flag it, because I don't think it was anyone's intention, including the town manager's intention, to carry that position forward indefinitely into future fiscal years. So I wanted to red flag that as saying, when we come back, or when some of us come back next budget season, that we're looking for that to make sure that has come off. I think that ideally, the reason why I'm comfortable carrying it is we're not at 2.5, we're at 2.1. So, removing it's not going to save us anything, really. But also, it is not an easy thing to go back in the fall and try to get town meeting to find new money and reallocate for a salary because those other positions were delayed. So I'd rather be happy at the end of the year when come December, knock on wood, if that's the timeline, that, town manager is able to transition, then we have a little extra buffer for other things, or it goes in the free cash.
Yeah. And I would just say that we are not aware currently of the real state budget, because we just have the governance numbers, and we know that we're not going to be aware until both houses, and strangely enough, they both take it up in separate months, which I don't understand, but nonetheless, they do what they do. So we're probably not going to have good numbers for the state till after annual town meeting anyways, which seems to be, their habit. I would just say that we should probably plan on another discussion of the budget as we approach special town meeting, because that is obviously when all these adjustments are made, and if it makes sense to adjust that line at that time, let's have that conversation. For right now, I just would I would support keeping it as is at the moment.
So I just have another question on the town manager's budget. We're carrying 2 part-time clerks, and I want to be clear, their institutional knowledge is priceless as far as I'm concerned, but I know that it's a union position. I just want to make sure the union is okay that we're dividing it between 2 part-time and not having a full-time union position, as it was previously.
That, through the chair, that was done quite a while back, and I have not heard any grievance or any complaints about having 2 part-time union employees in place of 1.
Okay, perfect. Please keep them in place for as long as they're willing to come into the building.
Trying.
All right, any other questions? No, continuing, let's look at the Finance Committee budget. Any questions? Okay, and hearing none, let's look at the reserve budget, the reserve funds. So, Madam Town Manager, I see that the reserve fund for salary and wages is really reduced to previous years. Is that because we don't have any contracts up for expiring this year?
That is correct.
We do have school, though, yes. The school has some units that they have, yeah.
Okay. All right, let's look at the Finance Department next.
So, Madam Chair, if I may, I just have a couple of questions, and this is going to sort of carry through in a lot of the budgets as I go through. For the town accountant, we have for the professional development / dues, you're budgeted for $800. You've only spent $80 or encumbered it year-to-date. So 90% of that is going to be spent in the next 5 months? Or is it that you're probably not going to use that, in which case, should we be carrying that same amount for this next year? And I want to give just a heads up to all the other department heads. I'm going to be asking similar questions, specifically about professional development and dues. It seems to be that, I know this board has really said that we wanted the town manager, previous town manager, to include professional development and really focus on providing the opportunities for our staff to develop professionally. And it seems like budget after budget, it's not really being spent or utilized. So I just want to make sure that we are providing those opportunities to our employees.
Sure. So in the accountant, professional development, and the dues, there are a couple of dues that are due towards the end of the fiscal year, like the Mass Society of CPAs is due in May, and also the renewal of the CPA license is due towards the end of the year. So it's a timing.
Okay, so we are going to expend that.
Yep.
The other questions I was, let's see, going to, if others want to jump in while I'm
Does
fumbling
anyone have
through,
any other questions?
feel
while
free.
The data collection stipend, what is that referencing, and it's new?
That's in the assessor's budget, correct?
Yep.
Yes, that was added, and I'll let the town manager add a few more details if you wanted. That was added as part of the GEU contract negotiations in FY 2026.
So they get funding for collecting data? I don't.
If I may, through the chair, at the time the GEU contract was negotiated, there was a clerical staff person in the assessor's office that were doing list and measures for the assessor. And it was above and beyond her GEU clerical duties. The union had worked with me on how to reconcile that, and that was the decision to provide a stipend. That person has since left, so I'm not sure if the next person will be doing that or not, or if this will, if we'll need this line item, I'm not sure.
So I just have some questions about the salary for the accountant's office. The stuff that's listed here for the CFO, 2% plus travel, $3,000, and deferred compensation, $3,000, and then buyback per contract. So all that's covered under the contract that the town has with the CFO and the treasurer.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. The other thing I have is, so we have an assistant town accountant that's making, according to the $67,000 roughly. In her capacity, is she overseeing the principal clerk as well as, the two principal clerks for the department?
Yes, that is correct.
So I know it's probably not going to happen this budget, but when I look at their salary versus her salary, at least for the principal clerk to step 11, it's the same amount when you consider that this is 50% and you double it to be 40 hours a week. So is there an opportunity in the future to look at the salaries of sort of our mid-management to make sure that they're positioned with respect to the level of their duties that they're doing with regards to supervising the union personnel or non-union personnel that are in the clerk's level?
If I may, through the chair, you're bringing up a very good point, and I ran into that in the clerk's office this year, where an assistant salary had to be increased because a high-level GEU clerk salary was meeting that person. I do agree this is an area that needs to be looked at again. I know it was looked at probably 2 years ago and increased, but is definitely something that does necessitate another review, especially because GEU employees have steps and COLAs. They tend to go faster when it comes to salaries than non-represented employees, and we need to keep that in mind as we continue to move forward.
Does anyone else have any questions?
I did just have a question about the data collection
Yeah.
stipend. Is this something where, like, the assessors or the treasurers have certification? Is this something that a professional organization, that this individual receives some sort of education in this field that would be akin to what we're paying these other two positions a stipend for? And I believe the town clerk also gets that once they get certified in their particular.
Right, the
Professional.
data collection stipend is different than the certifications for the treasurer collector and the assessor. So this is some additional duties that the GEU employee is performing to help the assessor. And that was what was negotiated to be an additional stipend for that work being performed.
So how do we determine that this individual is competent to do this? I guess that would be my general thought.
I would like to, I'm sorry, I was going to say, I would like maybe the assessor, Seth Woolard, to come up and just give a few comments on that.
Sure.
Good evening. So when we have a clerk come in and they are willing to do the list and measure, which has now been included in the contract, I personally take them out and we go out in the fields, we learn the craft, we learn how to measure. I usually keep it just to residential for them, pretty basic houses. How to interact with the public, how to identify roof lines, how to identify styles of house, count the bedrooms, baths, how to measure finished basements and things like that. So I take them out for a good amount of time until I feel they're comfortable and competent. Then they come back to the office. We review the field cards together. They have photos, they have time of visit, length of visit, and we just go and we do the analysis, and if it needs to be retrained or things like that, then we'll go back out in the field and re-entertain that. After a while, they're usually pretty competent, and we take it from there, and every inspection they do is reviewed by myself.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So, Seth, I guess I should stay there. Similar question with respect to the training courses. I know we budgeted $3,000 and you've only spent $280. Do you anticipate training courses being needed or professional development for yourself and your staff?
Yes. So the last couple of years, they have two major conferences every year, one in Southbridge and one in Plymouth. They're week-long courses. They're very in-depth. The last several years, we've been extremely busy, and the materials, I usually review the syllabus before we sign up for it. So if it doesn't warrant a full week, we don't go, and that coupled with, we've been really busy the last 2 years, so we haven't done a full week. I anticipate this year, although we don't have a clerk anymore, but I anticipate probably doing the full week in Plymouth and the majority of the week in Southbridge, so we will probably use the majority of that this year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any questions? Do we have any questions regarding their CIP, if there is one?
I still have questions for the treasurer collector's office.
Okay, keep going.
Sort of going in the list that you have here on
All
the
right.
agenda, Madam Chair.
Continue, please.
With the treasurer collector's office, can I just ask what the certification of notes account is? So we've only spent $106 out of $3,700. Just wondering what that is. And the reason why I'm asking is because we're carrying automatically the higher number forward for the next fiscal year. So I want to make sure that it's appropriate that we're actually sort of doing that. And we've looked at all the numbers, we've taken a hard look on whether they need to be increased or decreased each year.
Sure, so that's typically when we go out to bid, borrow. and we haven't had one in, I think it's been over a year and a half.
So we anticipate, because of the fire station, we'll be going out to bid, and we'll have
Yes.
that expense. Perfect, thank you. The other question I have is about, no, sorry, trying to find it here. So you have 2 assistants, and this is just sort of something I found interesting. You have 2 assistant treasure collectors.
Yes.
Assistant treasurer 1, 2, and
Yes.
2. They make the same amount of money, but one is a union position and one is a bylaw position, according to the spreadsheet? I didn't know how that worked.
No, oh,
Is that just a typo?
no, it must have been a typo.
Okay,
Oh, I apologize, yes, because it was Mary Ann who was a clerk, who was promoted to
okay, so they're both
assistant.
bylaw?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, perfect. And the other question I just had is similar to the assistant part-time town manager. I see we're carrying almost $15,000 for the former treasurer collector for treasurer collector assistance. Do we anticipate that going forward beyond this fiscal year, or is it just a transition?
Just a transition
Get really
period, yeah.
busy.
So, I mean, so our first assistant, Jack, had come on last summer. Our second assistant, Marion, had come on in the fall. We have 2 brand-new clerks, so I have an office full of brand-new people, and Marion is there just helping, and you know, to kind of fill the cracks, and she's been a lifesaver. I don't know when, but we're in February, and my mind is already at year end, so we have a lot to accomplish. Trying to get everybody up to speed.
Thank you.
Thank you. All set?
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So moving on to the next budget on our list, we have the legal budget. Sure.
To the chair, we are going to meet very soon to talk about this line item and the recommendation of the town manager and the analysis for the board to make a decision on outside counsel. The budget is level funded, but I did add additional funds into the reserve for that purpose in case the board does decide to make changes in our council. I just want you to know that it can still be done.
Yeah, so Madam Chair, my only question was, regardless of who our council is, given the number of times we've gone back to the council, whether it's Labor Council or regular town council, for advice or language or dealing with defending the town in lawsuits related to regulatory decisions or providing support for 40B housing, is $145,000 on level funding really enough, or should we be looking, I understand you're carrying in reserves, but you're also carrying reserves for other things too. Should we be looking, if we know that the legal budget's going to be higher, should we be looking to define it right now?
I honestly, I can look at it again. We do have, one of our councils is very low cost. He's been working for us for over 25 years, and he is within budget despite the amount of times we use him, but it is something I will take another look at.
Thank you. All right, continuing after, let's look at the human resource budget.
Are we human resource, or are we town clerk?
Yep, we're
Oh, I'm sorry, I was looking
agenda.
at the old one.
Law and then,
What,
Town clerk.
resources, aren't we?
oh, human resources, oh, okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
human resources. Yeah, go ahead.
Through the chair, I worked with Jillian on this human resource budget, and I worked with my assistants and the chief financial officer, who's integral in working with me on taking the human resource coordinator position and making it what it needs to be based on the actual duties being performed by the person. We have someone that is working far beyond the role of human resource coordinator. to the point where this person is the go-to person that has taken on a lot of responsibility from the accounting office, through training, different things that have come her way. She assists me as well quite a bit in the town manager's office. I have chosen to make her a division head for that reason, and also because human resources is extremely important in government, and as you guys know, it's important to elevate that position so that there is an understanding of its importance and of its prioritization within the town of Auburn and with any town. It is what I deal with mostly on every day-to-day basis outside other obligations. And, you know, I think if you look at departments individually, you'll see that they deal with HR issues often themselves, and they look to the HR coordinator and myself for assistance. So my recommendation for this, in front of the Board of Selectmen, the Finance Committee, is to change the coordinator of human resources to the supervisor of HR and people services.
Madam Chair, so I just want to confirm that that's the reasoning for the 9% increase in the salary.
That is.
Thank you.
I have a question. I see that when it comes to, we're offsetting some of these salaries with funds from other accounts too. So the, I see $13,200 coming from what account?
So, correct. We have the Health Trust Fund
Yep.
funding a percentage of both HR employees' salaries.
Okay.
We determined the percentage of the time that they actually worked on benefits for the school department and for town employees, new employees, and we determined that they could be funded at 10% and 15%, depending on the employee.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just ask, is the HR generalist position currently vacant, or was it a recently new hire? I'm just wondering how we are budgeting less than last year, or less than has already been expended or budgeted for last year. So we're going from 59,565 to 58,635.
Yes, that was a new employee for this past year.
And I just had a question. I see that the costs for advertising and medical exams have gone way up too. Not way up, but they've definitely increased.
They have, the cost of advertising for jobs is pretty exorbitant. It is approximately $500 every 2 weeks, if not I'd say like $1,000 a month, pretty much, if not a little bit more, depending on the vacant positions. We advertise through Indeed in addition to MMA, which is always a low-cost way to advertise, but we also advertise in publications based on the specific nature of the vacancy. For a planning position, would be in planning publications. For land use, it would be in land use publications. So it is a very expensive line item, but I believe a necessity, and it's one that allows us to track the applications coming in, interviews, and things like that, so.
And who gets the medical exams?
So medical exams are, let me just look.
The new hires?
So, hold on, let me call in Jillian
Oh, okay.
for the details on this one.
That's all right.
Hello.
Hi, Jillian.
How is everyone? So the medical exams are for new hires for police, fire, DPW, just to make sure that they are physically fit for the duties, or the job that they're being hired to do.
Thank you.
CDL drivers have to get periodic health exams.
That is from their own
They do that
departmental
themselves?
budgets. Yep.
Do they submit a reimbursement for that?
Not through my office, that they have their own budget in DPW and
So it's
Yeah.
covered through DPW. So that could also be one of the reasons why. I think at one point, everything ran through this account.
Yeah, I'm not, I think some of them that do go like, they don't go to our town designated doctor's office. If they go to their own, then we will reimburse them that way through our account, but otherwise, yeah.
Okay.
I just have one question on operations. I know that when the town manager was assistant town manager and HR director, and now under Jillian, are you continuing with all of the job postings, all of the sort of the collection of the applications or resumes for all town, not school obviously, but the town side, all coming through your office, and then the department heads are setting up the interviews with sort of those candidates that meet the requirements? I know at one point it was each department head had the task themselves, and it was kind of, wasn't standard across all departments.
Yeah, so right now, we are filtering all the resumes through my office, and then I do send them to the department heads, and then they do set up their own interviews. But I'm hoping to kind of reorg how we do all of our onboarding processes anyway. So right now, it is with with the individual department heads.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Good, all right, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Moving forward, we have the town clerk and elections. So let's look at the town clerk budget first.
I think one of my questions has already been answered, Madam Chair. Just confirming the 5.5% increase for the GEU employee and for the bylaw assistant town clerk, that was triggered because that brought the clerk, the union position too close to the assistant town clerk. So you had to create that separation and buffer.
That is correct. The GEU employee had a step increase and a COLA, and brought their salary too close, or actually might have even exceeded the salary of the assistant.
Okay. The only other question I have, actually, that's probably a lie, but for now. The only other question I have for this is, I noticed that the town clerk's salary increase is 8%, whereas most of the department's heads are 2 or 3%. Some, in the case of when they are taking on extra duties, was 9% in terms of HR. How did we come to that 8% increase?
Thank you. So I had worked with the town clerk regarding this salary increase. It was recommended by the town clerk herself, and I did an analysis to compare her position with other department heads with similar management of people, and she was less than the others. And I do remember when it actually was decided a few years ago, when she was an interim town clerk, her salary was never really adjusted the way it should have been, so that's what this is.
Great, thank you.
Okay. I have a question. How many elections do we have this year? Or I should say in fiscal '27?
Can I just add on to that, since, to follow up, is that since you're level funding the amount for the elections, should we be looking to increase it based on the number of elections?
Okay. So through the chair, we have 3 elections this coming fiscal year. We have, we have September 1st, we have November 3rd, and then we have our annual next year in 2027. I did not raise the supply account in the elections because I have $14,000 from the state that I have not used yet. So I figured I would use that instead of raising the supply account. The state elections, I don't have to pay for supplies as far as the ballots I still have to pay for the equipment that we use, but I don't have to pay for the ballots. So it doesn't cost quite as much as a town election, but I still have other costs I have to pay for everybody. So the cost went up for the election workers, but just not the supplies, because I figured I can use that to help save some.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Questions?
Just wanted to make sure had enough to cover the elections.
Yep.
All right, the next budget we're looking at is the town hall.
Madam Chair, can we skip the next two and go to the school department?
Sure.
Because they're here and we don't need to keep people, hopefully.
All right,
Longer than,
all right.
and it is school vacation week, so they might want to, well, you're about to have permanent vacation,
That means they
so.
have tons of time to spend with us.
Exactly. Nobody has to get up tomorrow, no.
The business manager, on the other hand, she's here for a while. You're here till January 30th, June 30th, and then you won't have to worry about all this happy stuff. You'll be enjoying a well-deserved retirement.
So, Madam Chair, if I can, I just have 3 questions. Building off what Mr. Carpenter just said, my first question is there any way we can convince you not to retire and to stay?
Well, I would say yes, except they've already worked out my successor, so I don't want to disrupt that process.
Okay, well, as I told Ed when he retired, make sure you have your cell phone turned on, because I'm sure you're getting lots of calls. My questions, I just want to confirm my understanding is that what is not included in the school budget, but is related to the schools, is the assessment for Bay Path,
Correct,
the assessment for Norfolk Aggie,
correct.
and then the other 2 I'm not sure about. Field and grounds maintenance, is that covered under your budget or in DPW's budget?
DPW.
DPW's budget, okay. And the other is the benefits of the employees, so not the salary or the raises, but like the health, dental, retirement, et cetera. Is that carried in your budget, or?
No, that goes through the town, but I believe that whatever we get for Chapter 70 money is kept by the town for that purpose.
Okay,
We have preliminary indication that Chapter 70 will be funded at a hold harmless level, which is a $75 per student increase. It was the same way last year at this time, and then later in the spring, that went to $150 per student. And as Mr. Carpenter pointed out, the state is still in process, so we don't know where that will all shake out.
and the only other question I have is, so there's about a $99,000 difference between your budget request and what the town manager gave. What's getting cut?
So I have to go through with my committee for that, right? So we were notified about the request just this past week, so we're going to have a meeting this upcoming week. If we want to fulfill that request, we will be hard-pressed to not hit staff. We are already either not filling or eliminating 6 positions in this upcoming budget. Last year, it was 4 positions. The year before that, it was 2 positions. Now, some of that is reflected in our enrollment, right? We're seeing a slight decrease over the last several years. I think since 2018, we've gone down slowly in enrollment, not dramatically, but definitely there's a downward trend. And so certainly that should be reflected in our staffing. But to the degree that we can afford to cut another 2 on top of the 6 that we're going to either not replace or cut is going to be a tough pill to swallow. Mrs. Stanek and I have been looking through, there may be some areas where we can save some small amounts of money, but, you know, nearly 88% of our budget is salary. It's people, you know? So when you're looking to make a big change, it typically hits people. Again, there may be some places where we could save some smaller bits, but it's not going to add up to that. And again, I have to go through that with my committee.
So I guess I would just ask the town manager, if for some reason, there's some, you know, magic genie that you can rub to define, if suddenly money comes, I would ask that you prioritize the school department to make them whole. I know that and I watched the meetings with the school committee, I know that you had already cut significantly just to get to that 4% increase. So I know it is sort of, bare bones now. So I would ask that we sort of prioritize that. And I'd also ask if there's any potential within your budget, if there's anything that could qualify under our financial policies that could be used for free cash. I know we don't use free cash for operating money, but if there's anything carried in their budget that might, sort of pass the sniff test for free cash, that would then free up that money to go towards closing that that $99,000 gap, I'd ask that, sort of you guys, work together and see if that's possible, so that we can, sort of make that whole.
Through the chair, I will work with the superintendent to review her budget and see if there's anything that we can use free cash for, and I'll let you know.
Thank you.
No, a 4% increase, I mean, it's pretty much in line, so things are pretty level, but you have to cut, like, was the contract or the benefits, what's driving that increase?
So non-discretionary spending, right? All of our salary agreements, we have a number of bargaining units. We're in negotiations with 3 units this year: instructional assistants, custodians, and secretaries. We have software contracts, things like that, those are non-discretionary. Those are things that carry forward to keep our curriculum up and running and functional. Certainly, special education, transportation, and tuition costs, those are things that they are what they are. I will tell you that we are very cautious about outplacing students. We have some tremendously talented staff that can work with complicated kids. I will tell you the level of need that we have seen this year. These are children that we don't have the capacity to support. For the couple that we've had to outplace this year, at the beginning of the year, from special education stabilization, we had 4 complicated kids move in very late last year and early into this year that were already outplaced. And we always work to bring kids back when we can, but those are some of the things that we just can't help. I will tell you, if I could just say also through the chair, since I've been in this role in 4 years, things like classroom supplies, curriculum competitions, we have level funded those. So over 4 years, in essence, we've taken a cut on a wide range of items. We've cut our professional development budget the last couple of years because that was the only place we could take anything from. Now, what we've done over the last couple of years is tried to train some of our in-house staff to carry forward some of the professional development initiatives so we don't lose them, because now we can do it much more inexpensively with our own staff. But we really have not increased anywhere else. It all comes down to salary and the people that we need to do the work.
Thank you.
I do have questions more on CIP, but I know we are concerned about 2.5. I don't like us going to 2.5 as a routine. I think it's a bad practice, but if we have needs, I think we should be fluid enough as a board to say to the town manager, we need a little give in this. So education is, there's not a department that I would say is non-essential in our, when I look at the discretionary things, I'm like, I don't think they understood the assignment, because what they're saying is discretionary. I'm like, no, I don't think so.
Yeah, it's not
But
really.
maybe, I'm just not that creative.
No, I know what you're saying.
I do think that we have COVID, which kids are still lagging from all public reports. We can't really, we only have 1 year to get them up to speed, and if they're already behind, we need to make sure that we have the resources to get them there. So I'm just saying now that I'm open to us looking at some of these budget requests that we need to fund, or we may not fund all of them, but we may fund some of them, and we may ask the town manager to do that, or that's something that I'm in a mind to do, because we can't really cheat on education. That's kind of a, bedrock thing. But on CIP, you had several items for building rehab, and could you just in general, go through what these represent and why they're so critical to education in general? Because people think a building, what could, well, if it's not properly heated, properly cooled, properly ventilated, that can affect everybody in different ways, health as well as concentration. So if you could just go through those, I'd appreciate it.
Well, I think some of the biggest items for FY '27 were related to Bryn Mawr School. We have 3 modular classrooms there, 2 of which are fairly old. One was put in when I was principal there, so maybe it's 10 or 11-ish years old. The others are over 20 years old, both of those requiring roof replacements. That's going to be a significant, the other 3 requiring roof replacements. So that's pretty significant. So that's the biggest thing there. The other ones do have to do with flooring and flooring replacement. At the high school, we're still working on our generator now, and certainly some outdoor track and field support. Our fields get so heavily used. What I will tell you that Mrs. Stanek and her team have done a great job on, and I'm not going to have a solid number for you, but we moved to an FMX scheduling software for all of our fields and for all of our facilities in general. And what that's allowed us to do is bring much more consistency to, they get like a pre-invoice when they sign up for something, so they know this is what it's going to cost. Do you still want to move forward? It tracks the invoices and all of that. So I think in time, we're going to see some real payoff by some of the fees that we're collecting for that. It just was not implemented consistently and across the board. Our buildings are on lockdown in fields with who's using them and when they're supposed to be using them. So I think there will be some ultimate offset down the road to that, but they get super heavily used, and the maintenance for that is no joke.
Just as a follow-up, are we prepared, or is the department prepared to, at what point are you prepared to enact these improvements? I'll call them maintenance, whatever you want to call them. Improvements sounds like you're doing something fun.
So as far as the roof, that's being looked at now. So as far as quotes and that kind of thing, I know we also have a couple of ADA compliance things at Bryn Mawr that are in process, kind of overlapping. Handicap accessibility in our nurses' bathroom, as well as some repair or a different plan for the front of the building. Several years ago, we had a lift put in outside. It is intended to be outside, but it has never functioned as it should because of the weather impacts, right? It gets water frozen in the bottom of it or in some of the gears. So we're also actively looking for some options for that right now to see what we can do for the front of Bryn Mawr. So those would be 2 other big things.
So would this be done off-school session, or would some of these be done during the school year? I'm
All
just
of
trying to get an idea, as we're looking at CIP, how ready we are to use these funds, how prepared we are to put them into action so that we're getting the actual results over what the ask is for.
Yeah, it would have to be, most of these would have to be off school, which is, you just can't run construction in a building when it's full of kids. So either one of the ADA or the roofs themselves, you can't work on a roof when children are in the classroom. So now some of those things can happen fairly quickly, right? Some can happen if you plan properly over a school vacation week, right? So, and depending on weather and all of that. But all of those are being actively looked at. We know through the town manager that, you're very committed to having us keep moving forward and not let funds lag behind. And so we are trying to keep up with that.
No, I appreciate it. I just, anything we can get out in advance so that town meeting members are aware that these funds are being put to use, that, we're not, and I know that everything, there's always something that happens at some building at some time. So I'm not saying, oh, you put this in so there's no gives back, but I think in the past, we've seen too many swap outs, and then people start wondering, what is the purpose of the CIP? Did you really need it? Or did you put it in to hold your place in line or
Right.
something, which, is not necessarily something that people appreciate.
I will tell you, I appreciated the flexibility when we had our Swanson Road swimming pool that had to be corrected. So I appreciate the flexibility for that, and that has turned out beautifully.
You don't have a swim team, I mean,
Yeah,
it's a
no.
lost opportunity.
No, we have a beautiful parking lot now, thankfully.
Madam Chair, if I may just go back to Bryn Mawr. I know, as it relates to Swanson and other changes, so we've been I don't want to say kicking the can down the road on Bryn Mawr, but that's essentially what we've been doing with all the ADA issues, the nursing. I believe there was some HVAC issues there that I think are covered through ARPA, hopefully. But is this 300 and what, my eyes are going now, 360,000, is that going to cover everything that has to be done at Bryn Mawr? And if not, what do we have to do to finally get to that point where we're taking care of Bryn Mawr the way it needs to be taken care of, and not continually saying, we'll get to that next year, we'll get to that next year?
Yeah, so I think this is honestly a bigger conversation that's going to surpass my tenure here with how things move forward that way. I think that's something that the new superintendent and Mrs. Stanek and obviously the community and all of you are going to have to look very hard at with what is the best next step for the town related to that. I will tell you, I have a very soft place in my heart for Bryn Mawr School. It looks old, it does a lot of great things, and it works pretty doggone well. But when you're looking at long-term planning, I will tell you, Packagug School has its own issues too, with its multi-levels and not really being all that accessible either. So that is something, I've started my list for the transition for the new superintendent, and that's one of the things on there. I think we need a comprehensive building study to say, what's our best next step?
So I respect that, and I'm not even talking new building. I just want to make sure that whatever we're doing is making that building, I don't say healthy, but, fully functional.
Well, I will
And
say
whether
it's,
this will actually do that, or if we need to look at putting more money in here for the CIP to do that. I want to make sure that it's addressing the ADA issues, it's addressing the nurses' issues, it's addressing the classrooms, the roofs.
yeah, I think the funding is there for that. Some of it has been, we just did a big construction project on our kitchen, which really needed attention at Bryn Mawr, and that was all funded through our school meals program.
Right.
So you can only do so much at a time, right? Things kind of back up to one another. So I think that's been the biggest issue. But our new director of facilities is on top of these projects and getting the information we need. So it's just kind of, you can't do everything at once. But our school is really overall, it's really in very good shape. It's clean, the kids have the space they need. I don't know. I think it's in good shape, but we do have to keep after some of these things.
Through the chair, in 28, 29, 30, 31, there's dollar amounts there. Is that because there's a plan in place for things, or was that just a best guess at those numbers?
Well, all of this is a little bit tricky, right? When you're trying to plan sometimes 10 years out from when this actually happens, but that's part of what we do in this role. And so looking at, I know Mr. Fahey kind of set the stage for this as he laid the groundworks. We're making sure that every so often, right, we had some money to look at HVAC issues, which can crop up, right, over time. Roofs, flooring, things that we know over time. So there's kind of been this staggered amount. So if in like 2028 at Bryn Mawr, there's some flooring replacement, a PA system upgrade. They haven't had a new PA system there, and some exterior door replacement. So that we do have some specifics that go along with these things. We don't just put in a random number, and we try to kind of keep things rotating as we know things will come up. And that's with the collaboration with Mrs. Stanek, Mr. Gregoire, and the building principals who know their buildings best.
I have a question. I know that we've joined the French River Consortium to make some purchases. Are we still doing that?
Yes.
And what are we buying through them?
We do a lot of our supplies, and also we do our facility supplies too, and athletics, and also we will do some of our computer supplies as well. And then one of our, our utilities for our oil.
The oil is bought.
Yeah, our oil is bought through the French River Bridge as well.
So have you found that the savings are pretty good or significant, or?
Yes, definitely with the oil bid, and they were just watching because we were going out to bid too. And sometimes it depends. Sometimes you get what you pay for, so some of the supplies might not be the best. But all in all, we have found that it is definitely saving us.
Okay. And what about the buses? What year are we in the bus contract?
This is the first year of the new contract, so next year will be the second year of our new contract.
Okay. And are we charging bus fees to students?
We are.
So historically, it was $125 per student.
Yep.
I think 3 years ago, we moved to a graduated fee schedule based on when you pay. We were finding that a lot of our families were coming in August, and it was a scramble to figure out, did we have room and who was riding and all of that. So if you pay by May 1st, anyone listening, it's still that same number that it's been for, I want to say, probably 10 or 15 years. It's
Yep.
been that way a long time. And then it goes up a little bit each month on the first of the month as you pay for that. So we do, this year we'll offset the budget, I think, with about $200,000 in transportation funding. Next year may be a little bit lower. We had some carryover. If you recall, we had all the money that we received for when the migrant students were here in town. That was really a good offset for us. That money is now all gone, but we were able to carry a little bit to this year, so that's giving us a little bit more in transportation.
Okay, thank you.
Just on that note, just for my own information, do we charge that amount across the board, or is there something where if you live a certain distance away from the school, you don't pay a fee, or you pay a reduced fee?
It's 2 miles or over, you don't pay. And if you qualify for free and reduced lunch, you don't pay either. So we have all mechanisms in place to make sure we know who those folks are.
Thank you.
And it's students up till 5th grade.
Correct.
Okay, anyone else have any questions? No? Nope, you don't, okay. Well, you're going like, looks like you're going to turn it on. I wasn't really sure.
I was actually going to turn it on to recommend that we continue down this threshold
Yeah.
before we do town hall general services and move through those departments that are here.
Yep. Great. Thank you very much, ladies. Thank
And
you.
through the chair, thank you all for your many years of support in this regard. It is much appreciated, and I will put Auburn up against any community with the amount of support and teamwork that takes place here. So it's
great.
really a special kind of thing, and I am very appreciative for it. So
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And change your cell phone number if you see Corain come up, especially. Block the number.
So let's look at the police budget. Okay. Okay, what questions do we have, people?
Other people want to start, or?
I asked all my questions offline, so I'm good at the moment, but
Okay, I guess I'll start. So with the cover letter, Chief, you mentioned that there's a 2.75% COLA for the Superior Officers Union and a 2.5% COLA for the Patrol Officers Union. Is that what was covered under their negotiated contract?
Through the chair, obviously, yes, that's what the negotiated CBAs were.
So that's for COLA alone, that's not for their step increases or their raises or salary adjustments?
Correct. There are employees, as I think I mentioned in one of the bullet points, that there are step increases for several of the patrol officers. We're a mix right now of younger police officers, newer, inexperienced, less experienced police officers, and some senior people.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood that. Thank you.
I had a question about the vehicles. I noticed that we're not paying as much this year as we have in the past for the lease purchase. Can you tell us about that?
Madam Chair, so you're referring to the CIP?
CIP, yes, the CIP.
Thankfully, through the work of, the various boards, whether it's this board or the Finance Committee, the town meeting, they've supported our vehicle acquisitions over the years. The DPW does a great job keeping us running and, in excellent shape there. We've had, in my opinion, one of the better fleet management programs within our department. And, I know through conversations with the manager that this was something that the board wanted to, look at and to be open-minded about the potential changes or need for changes. When Chief Lemon took over in 2022, he was able to purchase an additional 3 vehicles on top of the vehicles that we had programmed into CIP. And so we're in excellent shape with our fleet right now. I don't anticipate any problems, but as of right now, things are running very well, and we have enough vehicles to service the number of officers that we do have. Absolutely.
Okay.
Can I just ask one, just a follow-up to that?
Sure.
Are we staying with the Tahoes as the desire? Are we looking at others? I know that, and I can't confirm this, I heard chatter, so I'll say it as chatter, that the Tahoes had some concerns with relation to maintenance and upkeep that was not expected.
We haven't experienced, well, the first answer to the question, I'm not personally committed to any one vehicle. I tend to be more of the mindset that whatever is the most affordable and whatever we can get the most number of vehicles for. To that point, I've told the sergeant that runs our fleet, look at Durangos, look at, whatever the bid prices are. I sort of feel like the municipal vehicle market set a hook, and once we were hooked, they raised the prices significantly on the Tahoes. The Tahoes, at one point, the initial acquisition price of them was probably $8,000 less than what the Ford Explorer PIUs were. I had never priced out a Durango or anything. But I know there are some departments, whether it's Connecticut State Police, Rhode Island State Police, I know they use the Dodge products, and, they seem to be okay with them. They haven't had any maintenance issues that I'm aware of, but we ask, we reach out to the people that we do know in those departments and ask those questions. But I'm not committed one way or the other. It's basically what is the most affordable, what we can get the most out of. But we didn't experience any major issues with the Tahoes. The only initial problem early on was they went through the first set of brakes really quickly. And you'd have a brand-new cruiser come into the lot, and the thing would be squealing, and if you're outside, it really drew your attention. And I'm like, that's a brand-new car. Why does it sound like that? But I guess it wasn't uncommon for the Chevys or for the Tahoes specifically. I know other departments had issues with them burning oil early on. We never experienced that. We were on top of it. We made sure our guys were checking independently, and those that had to learn how to do that, we instructed them on how to do that as well. So we were very cognizant of that, and we didn't want that to become an issue.
I do have a question, and it's hopefully not a sore subject, but you had some positions in your budget that were not funded. I would like to hear your rationale for the four. I'll be perfectly honest, I'm not sold on the administrative sergeant position. I think we have sufficient management with the levels we have, so, but I would like you to go through what your rationale is for it, and,
Thank you, I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm not going to lie, this budget year this is the 5th year I've been doing the budget, and it was thus far the most frustrating year I've had. I'm not going to misrepresent anything. It's as far as the 4 police officers, we've noticed, not a super significant increase in calls, but what we have noticed is the amount of time that officers are spending on calls. So if the calls only go up 2,000 calls a year-ish, but if they're now spending 5 minutes instead of 2 minutes, or 7 minutes instead of 3 minutes, incremental, if you extrapolate that, that's a significant amount of time. And most calls require that 2 officers, sometimes more than 2 officers, are there, whether it's, I have all the numbers for various categories of calls. Obviously, the domestic violence stuff is on the rise, and it continues to increase every year. So initially, the 4 police officers was intended to cover the increase in call volume and time spent on calls. And, the other thing that's in the future, and that was kind of the planning, was we had, appeared before the board, myself and the fire chief, I believe in August or September, relative to the regional dispatch. To hire a police officer you're on the list, and we now have decided to conduct a background and start that process. From that process to the point where that police officer is actually useful on the schedule, it's 16 to 18 months. That's if everything goes without a hiccup all the way through. So with that timeline in mind, if you're looking at a 2-year window for the regional to start, and in 18 months to hire people to complete that process, then that hiring has to occur within the next 6 months. Because, I'm not trying to, be Chicken Little or anything like that, but the reality is the police department is the only department that is going to have any impact negatively when we move to regional. We have to replace those 11 people in some capacity. So they'll leave, and for the amount of administrative and other duties they do for the police station, you're going to have to replace those duties. And it'll be a combination of civilian, and we haven't really worked that part out yet, but civilians and police officers. But one of the original agreements that I was party to, and we all spoke about, was hiring police officers ahead of the transition to regional. So without the hiring, we can't do the hiring. And I understand the fiscal realities of what the town is facing. And, I actually enjoy all these presentations, to be quite honest. And I try to follow them the best I can. And I learn from the CFO whenever I get a chance to speak to her about things like that. But the reality is we're going to probably have to put off joining the regional because our timeline for hiring isn't going to meet it, and we can't backstop those duties with the people that we have now. Our minimum manning for the police department hasn't changed in 20 years. So it's been 3 police officers and 1 supervisor for approximately 20 years. And in order to staff the station and deal with prisoners and all the other ancillary duties, you're going to have to add an additional sector of responsibility as far as for call responsibility. And we did meet with the regional director, and there's an Alice receptionist, and there's, building out an AI answering service, rather, a part of your phone answering. But those will just, they'll kind of mitigate some of the call volume coming into the lobby, but it's not going to eliminate it, and it's not going to be able to replace an actual person. And, we've all spoken about service delivery and continuing the high levels of service to the community, and then for me, it comes down to safety. And it's, whether it's community safety or officer safety, there's something I personally can't ignore. I can't, if I have to choose between service and safety, then I'm going to choose safety. And I have that obligation, so that's kind of where I am with that. So yeah, I'm disappointed, but I understand. I don't think it was I don't take it personally. It's business.
No, I didn't think that you would take it personally. I would hope that you're a professional and you understand that everybody is struggling right now, and, we've tried to make up in the collective bargaining agreements for what has been requested. So, as I said to one of your predecessors, you can have people or you can have things. You can't necessarily have both. And I think we all need to reckon with that. What do you prioritize? So I'm a public employee. I'm going to forego a COLA if it means the 2 people sitting next to me keep their jobs. Not everybody has that mentality. But I would rather have people in the building working than me nominally getting more money. But I also understand that that's, not necessarily a common trait. But when would you need a decision on any number of these positions if the board were to entertain this? What is your timeline? And you don't have to answer it now if you can send it in an email or something. But again, I feel like, a lot of our departments are struggling, and we're trying to build up where we see the need, but we can't. Just because there's a need, we can't necessarily meet the need at the level that you would like or anyone would like. So, I just think that this is a conversation that I'll follow up with you offline, just so that we're not taking a long time. But
Can I?
To one of your points, I actually did without the 1% increase this year and negotiated my vehicle out of the contract. So, I have made some, I guess if you want to call them sacrifices, it's So I have put my money, well, your money, where my mouth is, I guess.
I'm not
Can I-
I'm not pointing any fingers, I'm just saying in general, the reality is,
No, I'm saying I agree with what you're saying. It
you know,
absolutely makes
we
sense.
the residents have seen their taxes increase exponentially, and some of that is on the board moving the factor back and increasing that on that side of the equation. So certainly, some of the pain that the residents are feeling are directly related to the actions that this board has taken. So, and if the goal is to get to the magic 1, which I'm against, but as an equal rate, we're going to have a problem paying for some of the things that we've been paying for. And we never seem to have that conversation at tax classification, but it's something that I'm very concerned about. But yeah, no, I'm open to discussing some of these things, but like I said, I'll look to talk with you offline and try and get a better understanding so that I'm not.
All right.
Can I just ask for clarification? You're probably going to answer it. If not, I'd like you to, just so I know. You mentioned in your presentation that the 4 officers were off the table. Is the sergeant being fulfilled in this budget? And then I will.
No,
Okay, so neither the sergeant nor the 4 officers?
No.
Okay.
we asked for a total of 5, and we got 0.
Through the chair. This was a very difficult budget, and I want to state that it wasn't submitted to you without extensive thought. I was not aware that it would take 18 months to bring on an officer. I thought we signed an agreement for the dispatch center to start in 3 years. So I figured that we would have the time to bring on these officers next year. If that's not the case, I will revisit and have a meeting with the chief to see, having them come early too is also an issue, so it's sort of a balance. We did agree to do this when the dispatch center turned over. We had that conversation. I just didn't think we needed to absorb the expense right now with this budget.
Well, let me just say, I'm not committing to doing it. I just feel like we need to have a conversation where we have asked, this is a different year, where we've actually asked the department heads to say, show us what you really mean, and they did. And
Yeah.
lucky you got to be the first one to be Scrooge, at least publicly. The others got to do the, shove them out the window quietly, but you have to bear a more public. But I think it's better for the public that they understand the needs as identified by the people that we entrust to keep us not just safe, but keep our roads open, keep our, roads safe for us to travel on and all that good stuff. So I just want to be clear, we need to be flexible sometimes.
Okay.
So I have a question. And again, this is in line with, I don't want you to think I'm singling you out. It's in line with the, same question I asked the town clerk, and I'm going to ask other positions. I asked the town manager as well. I noticed the deputy chief's salary is going up 14.8% increase in a single year. At the same time, your frontline workers, so the way I got that was that on the sheet where you have his increase, when you divide his salary, when you have the full list of the salaries, you just do a simple math of divide one by the other, it comes up to 14% for the chief's salary. So he was at FY '26, 115,000. He's going at FY '27, $131,131. So it's about a 14% increase in 1 year. So in line with the fact that our frontline officers and those below you are getting either 2.75% or 2.5% COLA, and then if they have step increases above that, what's driving that increase in that salary?
So the appropriation was, for '26 was 123.5, And then the department request for his salary is 131, which is,
So what we have here for, just on ours, we have the FY '26
you have the
budget.
114, right?
Yeah, it's the 114 and then the 131.
Right, that's what's,
What's the date? So the 123, if you go to the 123, what's that work out? It's still going to be above the 2%.
correct, right.
3,
So, Mr. Crane,
so it's a 6%.
so basically what essentially happened was that when the deputy chief's position was created, I was given the task of creating the salary for it, and we have, they're not standard necessarily, but between top step patrol officer and sergeant is approximately a 15% differential. Between sergeant and lieutenant is about that same, between 15 to 17%. So then what I did was average the two differentials and added that to the lieutenant's salary to come up with the deputy chief's salary. I never came down from what the chief's salary was at the time and tried to find a middle for that. So part of giving back the 1% this past fiscal year, or the current fiscal year, and we adjusted the salary for the deputy to try and keep or maintain those differentials, basically. Because it would get to the point that with the responsibilities that the deputy chief has and with the lack of free time necessarily that he has, being a lieutenant would actually be financially probably better, probably a better idea for you, because they have more opportunities. They can work overtime, number one. Number two, they would have more opportunities to work, extra outside details and whatnot. So it almost became, unless you were really enamored of the stars and some of the responsibilities, then there'd be really no fiscal reason to take the job, quite honestly. So we were just trying to fix that gap.
Okay, so you're doing what I had mentioned previously in another department, sort of looking at the mid-management and the difference between those you supervise and making sure that there's enough gap there. Okay, thank you.
And honestly, I apologize, I had forgotten that we had fixed it during my negotiation, basically.
That's fine. No, that's good to know. The other sort of question I had was going to your operations. I know you mentioned your minimum staffing levels. I'm sure there's federal standards on similar to fire on what you should have. I know that our population changes dramatically between the evening, who sleeps here, 17,000, and then during the daytime when I think we're at like 20, 29,000, if not more by this point. Are we staffing at that 17,000? Or are we staffing at what you're facing from the early morning until everyone goes to sleep at night? The population increase and the number of calls increase, the requests for traffic. I know I make a lot of calls and text to you guys and emails saying, can you please do enforcement? To sort of meet all those demands. And was that really factored in the reasoning for the four officers, not just the dispatch, but the realization that you guys are seeing a lot more requests for services?
So I appreciate the question. I had, when Chief Lemon was here, and then I kind of continued it on, I conducted an informal staffing study, I guess. I wasn't ready to spend the $15,000 to have an outside consultant come in and do it. Of all the ones I'm familiar with, they very rarely come back and say you need to reduce your allotment of people. And I just based it on previous or other studies, based on a Shrewsbury study, based on Situate PD, Massachusetts, down in the South Shore. And I have that document. I'd be happy to provide it to you. And it has a range, basically, from essentially 50 police officers to, on the high end, it's like 74, which isn't realistic, But the 50 is a realistic number based on the fluctuations in the population, daytime vis-a-vis, the overnight population. We have made an adjustment in the shift allocations to reflect that. So we added a body. We basically took a person. We reduced the number of people assigned to overnights, and then moved one to days and one one to the eve shifts. So we staff those shifts in, in line with what the call volume is for those particular shifts. And thus far, it's worked out fairly well. And, we continually look at it and, just to make sure that it is adjusted properly. And I would love to be able to add, obviously, a person to each of those shifts and back to the night shift. But we're still answering our calls, and we'll continue to do that.
I have a question. So on the education stipend, it looks like it jumped significantly from what was appropriated and then what was adjusted to what you are looking for now. Can you talk a little bit about what that is?
Sure. That was all, it was a contractual
Okay.
agreement. And, to her credit, the manager recognized what some of the industry standards were as far as educational payments and, or, degree compensation. With the way the world is now, you really need, as educated a police officer as you can possibly have. And there's actually a proposal within the Mass Chiefs to, I don't know if it'll go anywhere, but to require 60 credit hours or 60 hours of degree time to be eligible to be a police officer. And I don't know how that would impact veterans and all that, so I don't know how much support it will have. But nonetheless, the point being that, an educated police officer is always going to be a better police officer. So Ms. Vecchio definitely recognized that, and over the course of the contract, she was able to increase the educational stipend for the... So in law enforcement, there's a thing called the Quinn Bill, which is named after a senator, I believe, that came up with this idea. So degrees are compensated at a percentage based on the level of degree. Like a master's degree is 25%. So the educational stipends were essentially out of line with the Quinn Bill numbers or Quinn Bill equivalent numbers. So during the negotiations, she was able to bring those to a point where in the third year of the contract, the entire department will be receiving, if they're eligible, those payments equivalent to the Quinn Bill. And honestly, it helps us retain employees, and I believe it helps us attract employees, and in the future, hopefully, experienced police officers, which was always something somewhat of a hallmark for the town, attracting. I was a transfer from another police department, as was not the deputy, but several other people. And it's we have to be able to find that balance where we are hiring people that grew up in town and want to be a police officer here, and then also being able to add experienced police officers to our ranks, and and they help immediately. There's not an 18-month
Sure, yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Sorry, through the chair. So the overtime budget, is that increase strictly related to salary increase, or are we expecting more hours of overtime, and what are we doing to mitigate overtime?
Overtime, quite frankly, our overtime, I think, has been very much under control and in line over the years. We scrutinize overtime spending weekly or beyond weekly. So we're very careful with how we spend overtime. We're not just filling shifts to fill shifts. It's only to meet that minimum, basically, is when we are filling a shift. I know that with the creation of the third lieutenant's position, we were with the layering. So basically, there's a lieutenant assigned to each shift, and then there's a patrol sergeant assigned under that person. So one of the rules that we instituted was that they both can't be off at the same time, using leave time. So that reduced supervisory overtime considerably, actually. In the first full year that we're able to measure it, it was a significant decrease. And the number going up, I believe, went up 25,000, I believe?
75.
Yeah.
Originally, that number is basically, it is based on, it's more people doing more things at a higher rate of pay. We have several specialties. We have a fairly decent obligation or complement to the regional teams, the SEMLEC teams, whether it's the motor unit, the drone unit, the SWAT group, crash recon. So there, our people, we were one of the founding agencies for Semlec, and we've always maintained a pretty large footprint with them. And honestly, it gives our police officers the opportunity for specialty assignments and for advanced training, and they're good career opportunities. So, you know, the call-outs, when they get called out on an emergency basis to process a scene or to, you know, if they get called out for a scene, for any kind of scene, that's overtime. The training is done on their shift time, so we allow them off the shift to train in certain cases. But I think the overtime, again, over the years, if you look at, I mean, what the 3-year average is, you know, I would have to go back and look exactly why, but we track overtime in probably 25 or more categories, so I could, you know, we can break it down as far as whether it was shift replacement and who was that shift replacement, and or was it an administrative service, or was it a, you know, call-in or something like that. So I think the number is, it's in line. I think it's a little conservative, quite frankly, but
4 new officers wouldn't reduce the overtime.
4 new officers, well, potentially it could reduce some of the shift overtime, absolutely. The newer officers, obviously their rate of pay is lower, so their overtime rate is lower. Is there a guarantee? Yeah, I mean, just short of a guarantee, yeah, absolutely. Would 4 police officers reduce patrol overtime? Yes, it should, absolutely.
Thank you.
I just have one final question. On your CIP, there's $125,000 for building security. Not to go into any details for security reasons, but, you know, a high bar, like, what is that?
So that's actually, I've worded it as security, but, you know, building improvements, but security predominantly. I mean, we've all seen locally recently, whether it was Shrewsbury or Leicester, there's been vehicle-borne attacks on facilities where people have driven their vehicle into the facility. There have been at least 3, I believe, attempted or arsons of police vehicles. There was one recently in Abington where they tried to light the chief's car on fire for some reason. Not sure why. I don't know the guy. In Southbridge, same thing. You know, they actually ended up putting up an enclosure to keep their cruisers safe. And, you know, I think, as I said to Mr. Carpenter, it's hard to find that balance between protecting the people that work there and ensuring their security in their vehicles, you know, their personal vehicles, and obviously the investment that we made in cruisers and protecting those things, but not having it look like a fortress, you know? So you want it to be open and inviting to the public, and you want it to be a public police station, a community police station, but we also have we have an obligation, really, to make sure that it's safe. So the security enhancements are, we have a camera system, but it doesn't record generally, or there's no sound, so that becomes problematic sometimes. I mean, we have the body cameras, but, you know, as it applies to the facility itself, you know, we had an incident, was it about a year and a half or thereabouts, 2 years possibly, where someone came on to the property and you know, shot themselves. So that's, I'm not saying that a fence will prevent that, but it, you know, with a camera system, we'd be able to have some early warning, I guess. So the portion of it is camera system, upgrade, continue with the fence, and lastly, the access points that we have. So we have fob that we enter the building with. The hardware that services that is 25-plus years old, and we can't actually buy replacements anymore. So if one of the access points fails, then that's it. It doesn't work. You can still be buzzed in from the dispatch, but you can't access it yourself. So we're working on trying to put together a price on all those items, so.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry. Public dispatch.
Oh, yeah.
Public safety dispatch. Does anyone have any questions here?
So, Madam Chair, my only question, and it might be for the town manager or for the police chief, when are we expecting to see the cost savings for going to a regional dispatch, I know that, there's needs in the police department. We've now seen an idea of the timeline there. We know that we made staffing changes at the fire department based on the SAFER grant, but that comes off as the regional dispatch was thought to go off, and, we'll cover those costs there. It just seems like we are counting against that cost savings already, and I just want to make sure that our timing's right.
Through the chair, so do I. Which is why we're having this discussion tonight. I can get you the proposed cost savings. I don't have it off the top of my head tonight. Yeah, the SAFER grant did throw a wrench in things. I did not anticipate getting that grant and having to fund 4 new positions or 3 new positions at the fire department in 3 years. The objective was actually the police department and ensuring that we had proper coverage in the lobby and increase our police complement to where it should be. That was always my goal with the changeover from dispatch. I do know it's upwards of over $1 million that we'll save because the budget itself is going to be moving along. So there's also some percentage in the first year that I wish I knew it. I don't have it off the top of my head, but there's a savings in the first year where we don't actually have to pay our assessment, and that doesn't kick in till a couple of years later. So I can get you that amount, but the goal was to make sure that the lobby of the police station remains open through every shift. It's an objective of the chief. It's one of mine that's very important. Bring on these officers to ensure full complement and take on the duties that need to be taken on in addition to civilian employees as well. So I can get back to you on the estimated savings and what that looks like from the perspective of what we're planning on doing and also the new fire department positions that we're getting through the SAFER grant. Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, and keep in mind, they were presented not as savings, but as this was a potential chance to repurpose some of this money. And it was 1.2 million or
Reinvest,
1.4 million that
They
was that budgeted item.
I believe they estimated the assessment was in the $360,000 range.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about the overall budget for dispatch.
Correct, and yeah, it's approaching, it's nearly $1 million at this point. And again, just to be clear, as it pertains to the regional dispatch, from meeting with them, it'll be a phased in, where we're one of the larger departments that would be joining. As far as, we have 11 dispatch employees. Basically, right now, they have, I believe, 10 over 5 different communities. So just adding us more than doubles, that quickly. And there's still some discussion about Southbridge joining potentially, but as of right now, you have us, Oxford, Sutton, Spencer, Sturbridge, Charlton. So I would imagine, just to ease into things, that they would probably bring the smaller complements on first and phase it in that way. It would make the most sense, because when you dump our 10 or 11 people in there, it's going to be a significant major change. So I think they'll probably phase it in or do it incrementally, I would hope. So it may work out that our timeline, works out with that, too. Oops, sorry.
Thank you. Any other questions? No, now you're all set. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's move down to the senior center. All right, so let's take a look at that budget. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I was saying the same thing, like where,
We might have gone past it.
No, it's in the
No,
public
it's
services.
541.
okay.
Yeah, thank you.
So I guess I'll jump in with my only question was related to Kristen Pappas's position. It mentions that you moved it to DPW. I didn't see it called out at DPW, so when we get to DPW, I'm going to ask exactly where is it, and point that out, just to make sure that that did actually make the transfer over, because I didn't specifically see it called out easily to understand.
Through the chair, in regards to this budget, we did, actually, Jean and I have been talking about this for as long as I've been with the town, and her need to have someone that can help her with coordinating programs at the senior center. As you know, the senior center provides such an amazing benefit to our residents, especially in that age group that have something to do every day, all day, Monday through Friday typically. And what was happening is that the recreation director, coordinator, not sure the title, was split between recreation and the senior center. And what happened is, as I add or work with Kristen about establishing new programs, like this week we have a camp that we've never had before at the school for kids that, don't have school this week and aren't going away. And as she establishes new programs, it takes away from the senior center and her work there. And it's been a constant struggle, I think, since day one. So in this budget, I removed Kristen Pappas. I do have her in the DPW budget. She's funded through the recreation revolving account for next year. That's why you don't necessarily see it, but that's where she is. And we took the 30 hours and we added a staff person here. It remains pretty budget neutral because part of this funded Kristen's position. So it is only a 2% increase for this budget, but it provides a level of support to the senior center director that she hasn't been able to have for several years now. And I was going to try to hold her off on this and try to save money, and, as you can see what I've been doing with other departments, and it just rose to the top of priorities for me and for her, so that if she's absent, if she goes on vacation, there's someone there. Even though 30 hours a week is not completely full-time, it's what she needs in addition to her outreach coordinator, who is still there. So now, despite all of our programs, we have programs every day, all day, she will have 2 staff people working with her.
Yeah. So that sort of follows up on what I was going to ask was, if, Kristen was moving off, were we backstopping to make sure you had staff to support? So I'm glad that you've created the new program coordinator position. The other, you mentioned that there was the existing outreach coordinator. However, that's showing $0, and then the program coordinator one, not the new, is showing $0 budgeted. So are they paid for out of a special fund that we just don't see here?
Yes, so the outreach coordinator, she's paid for by the state formula grant. She works 30 hours a week. So she's not paid through the town.
Okay. I just want to make sure, you do a lot of great programming, and I just want to make sure you have sufficient staff to continue doing that.
I noticed that you don't have anything this year for the CIP. All right. Hearing no other questions, I think that's it. Thank you. Thanks for
Thank you.
waiting. You. Okay, next budget we can look at will be the library.
Actually, before we leave this, can I ask a question, Madam Chair? What is the timeline to bring this person online? If we're moving Kristen out, how are we backstopping the position?
Well, it needs to be approved at town meeting before I can fill the position. So the start date, I would hope be for July 1st, so there's a smooth transition, which works really well with Kristen's programs as well, because they really kick off in July. So that's what, I'll be working with the senior center director to make sure that's in place once we have the town meeting vote.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi. I
Okay.
just assumed you were going to have questions. I guess.
That's fine, thank you. So, what questions do people have?
Sure. I'll kick it off. First, I just want to thank you for all the great changes at the library. As you know, I mean, they're probably way too often, but the staff are great to work with. The materials are great. So thank you for all the hard work you've been doing there. I do have one question. on the line item for library associates, there's a $21,000 difference between what the department asked for and what the town manager is giving. What's the difference, essentially?
Sure. I think it's actually more than that, but it's a full-time senior library associate that I was describing as a reference assistant. We recently hired a reference librarian, and there is a well-known issue in libraries of reference burnout, where you kind of chew through your reference librarians quickly because they end up just being on the front desk all day dealing with the public. So I was trying to kind of get out ahead of that by adding another position, subordinate position that would support that reference librarian and kind of cover the desk for them, to give them some, to triage some issues, to give them some off-desk time.
So that would be the senior library associate / reference assistant, that position as?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. And then, just to go down the line, the assistant library director and head of youth services, that is accounted for in this budget?
That is correct.
Yep, that should be right under the director line.
Then let's see, the part-time library associate, that's accounted for in this budget?
Yep.
Perfect. And finally, the page position, is that accounted for in this budget?
That is not.
That is
It's not, okay.
So just to wrap that up, there was a request, I believe, we made a part-time library associate full-time with this budget, and
Yep.
that was accounted for. We promoted our children's librarian to the assistant, that's accounted for. We had to remove the page and one library associate. Is
Yeah,
that correct?
the senior library
The senior,
associate.
right.
Couple other questions that I have for you. So I know that our staffing has increased dramatically. We're closer to a full staffing of a library our size. But I noticed that the OT budget is still staying at the $3,000. Are you expecting to use that overtime, or are we just sort of level carrying that just in case?
Yeah, I mean, personally, that's a just in case. This was kind of my first year going through the full budget, so I hadn't changed the overtime last time. Looking at it, though, I mean, we've been really trying to manage our staff and kind of keep things at a reasonable level, so we haven't really had to use a lot of the overtime this year. Wanted to finish out the year and just kind of see how things go, but I think we will likely not need that entire overtime budget, just with the way that we've been able to kind of manage our staff this year.
Great. The other thing I just want to call your attention to, the library materials. So I know you've expended 62,000 of the 102 allocated for FY '26. And if I remember right from listening to your last meeting, this is a state mandated amount that has to be spent
Yes.
by a community to keep our accreditation, to keep the state aid we get from the
Yes.
LBC. So you have 5 months left. Are you going to get spending?
Oh, yeah. There was an issue, not that everybody needs to hear the long involved stories of library world, but there were kind of two major library materials vendors in the country. One of them went out of business a few months ago. So needless to say, the remaining one then got slammed with business, and that happened to be right around Christmas time. So there was a very long delay with basically everything that we had ordered around late October, November, December. That all just came in very recently, and those numbers are not reflected on this yet. So there is, actually, I just signed off on a bill schedule this morning that is enormous because it's several months of spending. They have since stepped up their responding to orders, so it should go a lot faster going forward.
Great, and I just want to call out that the increase to 134,000 that the town manager offers is reflective of that formula
Correct.
of the state.
Yeah.
So we don't have a choice on that, we have to do this.
Right.
Perfect.
As long as you want us to still be
Yes.
extant.
Okay. If you need some, recommendations on magazines to spend some of that
Always.
money, you let me know.
Always.
I'll give you some.
Abuse of office, you just said it publicly.
As somebody who goes to the library, the last question I have is in the CIP.
Oh,
So
sure.
I know that there is the question of the expansion of the library. I know we had money donated by the Pappas Foundation. I know initially it was going to be a Brady room, and then that was reassessed to be probably not the best selection for a library. And that there's been a committee working on it. As we're doing with other town buildings or town equipment, vehicles, et cetera, we're carrying pockets of money each fiscal year until that fund gets big enough to spend. I didn't know if it made sense to start doing that for the building, the library building, to start putting some money in, starting this CIP. I know we have, because I asked, we have over $12 million in our free cash. I know that that is extremely high compared to where DLS wants us to be, as well as where we should be with respect to their recommended formulas, based on, you just go to their website and they have, recommendations that they have. Is that something where we should start plugging away and putting in a bit of money each year, starting this fiscal year, using free cash, to make sure that when it comes up, and when we have a plan to move forward, we can afford it?
Through the chair, if I could speak to that, we have done a lot of work regarding this proposed expansion for the library, and I do like your thought process. It has been something that's crossed my mind for this year and current years. I am still working out a plan on how we would fund the expansion, and it could possibly be using some free cash. I'm waiting till our financial policies come back from DLR, and I also need to speak to the Pappas family also about that. They're very intimately involved, as you know. So we have a few more things to do before we move in that direction, but if worse come to worse, absolutely, we need to start budgeting that every year and accumulate the funds, the borrowing power. But I'm hoping that it's something that's a little bit more immediate that we can do sooner. We also have the opportunity in the next couple of years to have possibility of having a grant or two for the work being done at the library. So there's a few things up in the air right now that haven't been determined.
So I guess as you're going through the process and sort of coming to a final budget with Finance Committee, if you can just look at maybe putting some kind of placeholder in the budget, because asking for 100 this year and 100 next year and 100 next year is a lot easier than going and asking for 300,000 at once. I found with municipal budgeting. Thanks.
I think we need to have a vote on that, Mr. Crane. So let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Right. Okay.
If I may, so we need to increase the materials budget by 25% in order to get funding?
From the 102 to 134. Yeah, there's a set number that we have to hit every year to get accredited. For us, it's 15%. We have to have 15% of our overall budget has to be spent on materials. And because we're increasing some positions, we're adding to the travel conference budget, like 15% of that has to be added.
Seems excessive.
Well, I will just say, as someone who does use the library, I think we need to invest in the catalog. There are a lot of holes in the catalog, so like a lot of my requests end up being fulfilled by other libraries, which is the beauty of the C.W. Myers program, so don't get me wrong, that's fine. But it's also we need to have more of a catalog. So I get that it looks like a big increase, but this is another kind of line item where we've always funded the library at the minimum level, always. And as we know through the most recent strategic plan procedure, there is an appetite in the public for more, and we need to be ready to meet that moment. So I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I do feel like when I'm on the library catalog, I'm frustrated that I can't just go walk into the library, pluck it off the shelf. I've got to wait a week or sometimes 2, sometimes 3 for it to be fulfilled from as far away as Stockbridge. So, and if I'm a student who needs that book for a class or something, they may not be able to wait the 3 weeks. So, those are the type of things that, I worry about.
My comment wasn't, it's a large increase, I'm not saying it's not needed, but that budget of, it has to be 15%, every ask that was asked for in there gets included, so we're being forced to spend more money. So either we need to reduce the other items to stay in line, or next year it's gonna be $55,000 more. So we have to understand, as the labor cost goes up, if we have to continue to increase, that is going to be something we cannot fund going forward.
True, but we also as a board have made a priority of professional development. So I think we need to pick our poison on certain things. So currently we have 2 assistant treasurers who aren't certified. That's the first time that's happened in a long time. We need to get them certified because that's a good thing for them career-wise, and it's a good thing for us career-wise. A lot of new staff has been added. We need to make sure that they are doing it the appropriate way, and that they can serve the public correctly. So I get your point that the state is doing this, but we also don't want to lose accreditation. I have seen other libraries in Central Mass do that in the past. They've made that decision, and I don't think that's necessarily a great decision, but
All
the
right.
point is made.
Yeah, I would just add to that along with that state contracting comes, a lot of state grants that we get that recently paid for this development of the library strategic plan that you covered the cost of the consultant. We would have to cover that ourselves. There are money for materials. There's money, we've asked the library to increase the number of hours so they are now open more, which means we need to provide the staff for that. And for many years, I will say that the library was really on minimal budget is probably the nicest way of putting it. And even there, they were giving money back because they were not investing in materials, computers, and we heard significant outcry consistently from the community that our library was not meeting the demands that other libraries were. Additionally, if we lose accreditation, not only do we lose that access for state grants, et cetera, but that means all residents lose access to CW Mars.
Right.
So we cannot borrow materials from other libraries. So there are reasons why we need to keep the accreditation, and I understand the pricing, goes up as we add staff, but we're adding that staff now because we failed to add that staff previously. We're seeing overtime, we're seeing increase in materials because we failed to make those investments in the future. So yeah, we've kicked that can down the road that we're now paying for it. I get that. But I don't think this is something where we say, oh, we might want to consider losing accreditation or scaling back dramatically the library because, we've seen that. We've seen the result of that, and the community was not very happy with it.
I would just say, I don't think we can support 24% increases year over year. That's my thing. I'm not saying it's not needed. I'm not saying that, I mean, granted 15% having to do that, I don't want to lose accreditation, but we have to find other ways to do this if we don't want to lose accreditation, because 25% year over year is not sustainable.
Well, but your assumption is that we're adding all of the staff every single year. The fact, we've had to add the staff because we did not add staff. I mean, that's why this number is so big, hitting us so big this year, was because we didn't do it incrementally previously. We were subsistence library, and now we've said, okay, we want you to fully staff. They're now fully staffed. He's not looking to add 5 positions every single year where we're going to have 30 librarians or 40 librarians. This is a one-time shot that we're having to deal with this year. It doesn't mean it's going to carry next year, and the year after that, and the year after that.
No,
I'll just echo what Todd said. That's the plan. I mean, once we've kind of hit these last few positions, we should be good for a while, so it shouldn't be that kind of hand over fist. This was just because we were so understaffed.
And, I mean, in the past, we've insisted on certain things as being put in budget so that we can track the cost of it. Certainly, we can look at if there are areas like professional development that we can pull out, if that becomes a big point, or things like that. We can certainly keep that professional development account, active, but not have it as part of the library, to your point. But, yeah, no.
All right, we all set? Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So next, we're going to look at the ACTV budget. Hi, Chris.
Keep going. Basic TV budget?
621.
No, it's in that same section, isn't it?
Yeah, it's in the same section.
It's back.
I don't
It's
think
It's after
behind
veterans.
library.
Yeah, it's after veterans.
Like, yeah.
The
Yeah, I
last
do.
two
There you go.
pages in that
There
section.
you go.
There we are. Like I thought I saw it.
Questions?
The only question I have is, I know that I discussed with the manager about increasing the stipend for those. Is that reflected in this budget?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
I just have the question that for both contracted services as well as production class, we haven't spent that much compared to what's budgeted for FY '26, and we're carrying that same amount in FY '27. Are there reasons why we haven't done that? Are we planning on doing it in the future? Have there been
Well, the production class is what we contribute to the high school for their production class. They just haven't spent it yet.
But they do normally spend it?
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's- Okay. And the other thing is the contracted services?
That's for our contribution to the Code Red and the fiber restoration and we do the cable boxes for charter, and the cable boxes are a monthly expense, and the contract, the others kind of hit me at odd times during the year.
Okay. Basically, I just want to make sure that you don't give anything back. Quite frankly, you run a great service, and I want to make sure you're spending every penny we give you.
Yeah, well, it all comes out of the cable fund, what we get from Spectrum, and whatever is in spec goes into retained earnings on our side to fund projects like
Yep.
Camp Gleason.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. Questions?
Nope.
You all set? Thank you, sir.
Okay,
You're all
thank
set.
you very much.
All right. So, let's look at veteran services now, please. Ms. Vecchio, could you tell us what percentage we get reimbursed from the state for the veterans, for what we spend? What?
75%.
Oh, we get 75% back, great. Just want to make sure people know that, too.
So, Madam Chair, if I can just ask, when we had the Veterans Affairs Officer here to do his department or snapshot of his division, he had mentioned that in other communities, what he does and what he'd like to do here is to hold an annual event where he invites the veterans, even if it's for a continental breakfast or something, to invite them, thank them, and then also provide education for the benefits that they can get and have a right to. And I think everyone around the table said, yeah, that's a great idea, let's make that happen. Is there money in this budget for that?
So I have spoken to Dave Adams, the Veterans Officer, about specifically that issue because it was a topic of conversation for us. And he said he's working, because he works with multiple towns, he's working to try to do something that's more than one town and no cost to us. He was hoping for a grant or to try to be able to fund that. It's still something he wants to do, but he's comfortable with the budget as presented.
Okay.
So I guess I would just ask that, although he's comfortable with the budget as presented, if there is a possibility for us to find $1,000 to put in his budget to cover that cost, and I'm going to duck in a minute probably, even if it means taking $200 from each one of our stipends to do it, I'm okay with that. Because this is something that I think we need to prioritize. We put away $800 a year for the volunteer recognition, which is very important for volunteers for our boards and our commissions. If this is a way to get veterans together, to get them in one place, and not only thank them, but really make sure they know about the benefits that they have coming to them for their service, then I think that's something the town needs to do a better job of doing. I know I've had a conversation with someone recently who was not aware that they had the right to certain benefits. And, you know, after watching one of our meetings and hearing about it, they're now getting the benefits, but before they didn't know. So I want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to get to them, to share that information. And it sounds like, you know, I'm sure that the Tuttle Post or the Elks would be willing to work with us to keep costs down, to do a room with a continental breakfast, some coffee, some pastries, to get this done, even if it's $4,000.
Okay, any other questions on the Veteran Service budget? No. Nope. All right, let's look at the Youth Commission. Okay, I see it's an increase of 3%. Okay, and that's a little higher than we have been doing. Weren't we at 2.5% prior for an increase?
So through the chair, this is the amount that we pay for services at AYFS.
Yep.
I work with them closely regarding the contract they have with the school department that this pays for. The 3% is a modest increase based on the actual work that's performed. There's quite a bit of work that is done that at this point, as of today, is not paid for by the town. I'm working on that to compensate them and use opioid funds because of the purpose of that fund and how we can relate it back to the services provided at the school department for this. So the 3% is just a modest increase. It's not for someone's specific salary, it's for AYFS.
Yep, yep.
So my question is, based off of that, does this budget now make them whole to cover 100% of the costs projected for the next fiscal year that they provide to the school department? We know that, and I've asked this question previously when we had representatives from the Youth Commission here in AYSF, does this cover all your costs? And they always say, well, we make do. I know things are getting very tight over there. I know they can't keep making do, but I know that they're also, the kind of work they do, they're not going to shut someone off because they ran out of budget. So I want to know that if the town is using $500,000, I'm just throwing this number out, we're not, $500,000 worth of services from from Auburn Youth and Family Services through their contract with the school department, that we're fully funding that $500,000. Does this do that?
Through the chair, it does not. It never has, and I am working very closely with the board at AYFS. As I stated, there is a correlation between the services that we provide under the opioid funds that we can actually use to cover that expense. I've asked for an invoice for this fiscal year, so we finally have one fiscal year that's properly funded. I will do the same thing for next fiscal year. This is the tax levy portion, But no, they are not 100% funded based on this line item.
Okay. But we're making a commitment that, although it's not showing as a tax levy, through use of the opioid funds, we're going to make them whole for the current fiscal year we're in, and we're going to make them whole for the next fiscal year we're in using those funds.
Through the chair, I can make that commitment right now. I am looking into previous fiscal years based on the grant money that we got in for opioids. There's a chance we can actually properly fund them, that small difference over those last few years. So there's a chance we may be able to do that as well.
Great. Thank you very much for your hard work on this.
And just as a reminder, recall that a lot of ARPA money went to Auburn Youth and Family Services.
It did, but it went into other programs that, due to the COVID, they saw increases in both their food, their food needs, and other programs they had. It wasn't specifically for this. So we did not, even with the ARPA money, we still were not making them whole. And I just want to make sure we're very clear on that.
I am very clear on that. Thank you very much, Todd. All right, what is next? Let's look at maturing debt and interest, please. I do see one, Ms. Vecchio, I see that one general obligation bond is coming off. It's been paid, right? The 8.9 million?
That is correct.
Good. What's the interest?
Yeah, there's a decrease in one as well, so 450,000. There's a couple increases, but I don't have any questions.
Questions? All right, let's look next at the pensions and benefits.
We skipped interest.
Oh, the interest. Any questions on the interest? Excuse
I
me.
didn't have a sheet for interest. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, there isn't one.
It's blank.
No, I meant you could look at mine.
Oh, that's fine. I can't imagine it's that exciting. It's just what we're paying on bonds. There should be no mystery. So I have no questions on the interest. It's again, bonds that we've currently taken out, so.
All right. Let's look at pensions and benefits next. I do have a question on here. I see a new line item, retirement payout fire.
That is correct. Through the chair, in the last couple of years, there has been, I believe, dialogue through the Board of Selectmen, but I definitely know finance, about trying to fund possible anticipated retirement payouts. And you've seen the transfers that have had to go through in the past couple of years when people retire. This is an anticipated retirement. If the person doesn't retire, then it goes back into the general fund. But at least we have something budgeted that we don't have to go in for a transfer for, and that we just anticipate ahead of time. I am not going to say this is the only retirement we'll have, but we're just trying to establish this and work with the department heads to anticipate that need.
Okay, thank you. It's a good idea, actually.
Great idea. What is the requirement for an employee who's preparing to retire? What's the notification requirements?
I don't know if there is any, to be honest with you, unless there's something in a collective bargaining agreement or in a employment contract. I don't believe there's any requirement for anyone to retire. I think they can retire whenever they want.
No, what I mean as far as if I'm planning to retire,
Yeah, they don't have to tell
they don't
us.
have.
They can let you know they're leaving today or tomorrow.
Yes.
It's a bad process.
Trying to maintain good relationships so that doesn't happen.
Might happen even if you have a great relationship. They might
Good
just-
chance.
One. Well, maybe that's something for the next bargaining, idea for the bargaining to work that in, because
Yeah.
that is not fair to the employer. And the state used to have a similar one,
Yeah.
where literally you could just not show up for work and not tell anybody. That is no longer the case. You're required to notify your manager, and you can still withdraw, like 24 hours ahead of time, or whatever weird amount, but, yeah, that used to be the case at the state level, but I think, you come into the office and nobody's there, I think that's a problem.
All right, hearing no other questions, let's go back and look at the town hall budget, number 192.
Well, I did have one question on that.
You did.
Pension and benefits, actually, which I wrote down.
What is it?
Actually, two, now that I lied to you. Non-contributory retirement line item, and the healthcare audit line was removed, so I was just interested in what non-contributory retirement is, and there were a couple other lines that were removed, but they also hadn't been funded for several years, so.
The non-contributory retirement is the town manager's deferred comp that's in her contract.
Okay. Well, that was easy. The healthcare audit line, which, again, I look back at all my books, and it hadn't been funded for some time. It's not here. There's, like, wellness initiative had been removed as well. And it just may be that those are not services that we need or whatever. I just was kind of interested why they were taken off.
Through the chair, I'm not sure why they were taken off, but I can speak to them. Healthcare audits are very important, I feel, and they're important to ensure that people come off our healthcare benefits, especially because the cost is so high when they are supposed to. If they leave the town, if they have a child that turns 26, and they are supposed to be getting off our insurance, we want to make sure that happens. I am working with our consultant Gallagher Associates, who might be doing that for us through a different process, and I'm also working with them on wellness, because through our process of going out to bid, we get wellness funds that help fund initiatives we have with our employees. So say we have a blood pressure clinic or something like that, it actually comes from our providers versus us. So it's a way to provide a service to our employees that is not directly our expense, even though it is an indirect expense. We definitely pay it for it.
Well, I know they used to do yoga up here and certain other things up here.
Well, now that Camp Gleason has got their occupancy permit, I do believe we could start doing that again.
Got a swim program, they can do that too. Anyways, that was all that I had to ask. And it is getting late, so.
All right, thank you.
Try and stop
So
being.
next budget we can look at would be town hall.
So I just have one question with Town Hall. It's probably one of the only budgets that actually went down, and it's $2,000 less in the equipment and maintenance.
So that's my budget. And I can't cut everyone else's and not cut my own, no. So I made this recommendation because, just like you, I'm looking at prior year expenses, I'm looking at what we need for the next year, what I can see coming down the road. I can tell you that with the HVAC work that we're having done on the property, I do believe we'll be fine with this budget. Just looking at the whole picture, I think we'll be okay with $2,000 less.
Sounds good, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right, next we'll look at the general services. Oh, this is,
Just notice a number of decreases. Is this due to you tracking actuals? Why do we have such good news in so many?
Again, this is my budget. So I was able to decrease our insurance budget. I have been working to get 3 quotes on, so our insurance is broken up, like workers' comp and general liability, we have vehicle insurance. So we're getting a lot of quotes. We're rewriting our insurance, and I am confident with the figure of, that I have projected here. And it'll be the first time it goes down in the last few years at least. And it was necessary because there are some vehicles that may not be worth as much as we're actually paying for insurance and things like that that are being removed as well. So that's why that one's going down. Let me see.
Electricity, streetlights,
Okay,
water,
so-
sewer, heat line, advertising, office supplies.
So if you look at the averages and you look at past expenditures, it just makes sense. It doesn't, unless I know it's going to go up for a particular reason, I actually based it on past expenses.
Gas, oil, and diesel, are we in a consortium at all for buying these?
I don't believe so, no, no.
Okay, thank you.
Like, so a consortium as in with the other towns?
Yeah. I'm not sure if they're available, but, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, not hearing any other questions, let's look at the last two. Let's look at Bay Path and then Norfolk Avenue.
So my only question with Bay Path through the chair is the increase due to expected more students going to Bay Path? Or is it just that that's covering the cost of the current enrollment?
Thought it was an assessment.
It is.
Karen's going to
I know it's an assessment, but sometimes they'll base it off of the expectation of more students coming or
They're
not.
not allowing more. They've
Okay,
capped.
they're not, okay.
It's whatever number is set, whatever number we have in October. Yeah.
So I spoke with the business manager at Bay Path, and she said we have 13 more students that will be attending. And also, there was an increase in the minimum contributions. And when they come to the Finance Committee, they're going to give us some additional details on all of that. But a lot of it is formula-driven, and it's kind of, unfortunately, our assessment goes by that, so it's going up quite a bit for the next fiscal year.
If I may, through the chair, I have a meeting with Bay Path and the area town managers that are part of the Bay Path system to talk about one of us or two of us being a representative for their collective bargaining for as they go into the next year. I'm going to try to be involved in that. I think the more involvement we have in Bay Path, because of the increase, $300,000 is a huge increase. The more we are involved in that, the more information we have, the better. So I do believe it's, my meeting with them is next week. I just wanted to let you know they did outreach, I did schedule it, and I'll be meeting with all of them, and I'll brief the board on that once it's over.
And I know we also have a vacancy on one of the two Auburn representatives to the Bay Path School Committee. Are we filling that soon?
Yes, that is, we are getting resumes, we did post that, and I think we have one candidate so far, possibly two, is it two? Two candidates. So yes, we'll be making an appointment soon.
Good. All right. Any other questions? So let's look at Norfolk Aggie. Wow, this one. Oh, which we have the same number of students then? How many students do we have going there?
Right now, we have 4. There is one who is graduating. At this time, we checked with them, and they do not have any other applications from Auburn, but they also have not come out with the increases in the tuition and the transportation, so that's why at this time, we're recommending that we level fund until we get some additional details.
All right. We share transportation costs, correct? With another town?
Yes, I believe so, or our students,
Yeah.
they pool.
What town do we commute with?
That I don't know.
Who handles that? Is that through the school department?
I believe so.
Okay.
They have some.
Transportation, yes.
School department, okay, thank you.
Good.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. All right, so the rest of the budgets we're going to look at next week, whatever we didn't look at this week, including the CIP, continuing to look at that. And we're meeting on this coming Monday. Does anyone have any questions?
Motion to adjourn?
Seconded.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?